First, I want to thank Bangor Savings Bank for their generous support for this fellowship. We at the Community Loan Fund really appreciate that support. I'd like to, very pleased to introduce Veronica Gassert, a second-year law student at Vermont Law and Graduate School. Veronica also has a master's in food and agricultural law and policy and a bachelor's in environmental science. And this summer, Veronica has been applying her expertise by researching climate solution opportunities to support New Hampshire farmers that the Community Loan Fund serves. You know, I was very impressed with how Veronica was able to approach all of that global climate crisis information that is out there and funnel it down in a way that addresses the ecosystems that New Hampshire farmers work within. Veronica's patience, her thoughtfulness, and her dedication to this project has brought forth insights that will allow us to increase our work in climate transformation. Veronica, I wish we had more time to visit sunflower fields and speak to farmers, minus the rainstorms we had. I've enjoyed learning with you, sharing stories of China, and I want to thank you for the incredible work that you've done. I mean, what you've accomplished is going to be very impactful, and thank you.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Charlene. It's been a pleasure working with you as well. And as Charlene said, my name is Veronica Gassert. I was the Sustainable Agriculture Project Manager at the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund this summer. And the main project goal for the Sustainable Agriculture Project was to figure out how to lower barriers, especially financial barriers for New Hampshire farms to achieve climate adaptation, especially as the weather becomes much more unpredictable during climate change. And if you can take it to the next slide. So for the background of the deliverable, I first needed to study what are the regional climate impacts that are affecting New Hampshire farms, as well as what is the relationship between climate change and agriculture. So you can see from the diagram that farms emit greenhouse gases such as nitrous oxide, methane, and carbon dioxide. These come from different and various on-farm processes. And these gases, as we all know, drive climate change. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a list of regional climate trends that are prevalent in the Northeast region of the United States. These are trends that are expected to continue throughout the 21st century. And so these really formed how I prioritized which climate smart agricultural practices were the best for New Hampshire farmers. And next slide. So the main takeaway here is that the Community Loan Fund aims to finance climate adaptation efforts. And as I said previously, this is especially important as the weather is becoming more unstable and unpredictable. And so from the diagram, you can see how climate adaptation methods, these are things like soil management practices, cover cropping and reduced tillage, also solar energy production, and purely adaptive measures such as using hoop houses or other temporary structures to for season extension and crop protection. These methods are what farms need to move towards in a proactive manner, because even though there might be crop insurance available, crop insurance isn't going to cover all of the chronic climate stressors or climate shocks that happen in succession. And so you can see from the 4 various elements around the farm viability circle, we need all of these things to support our small scale New Hampshire farmers and the Community Loan Fund, which provides loans and technical assistance to farms, can help farms by incentivizing and reducing that financial barrier to implementing specific practices. Next slide. So for the next phase and the next step of this project, we are hoping to gain access to some additional funding to develop and offer an incentive program. We're going to develop criteria for selecting specific farms to work with. And then we hope to partner with technical service providers such as the Natural Resource Conservation Districts or UNH Extension, who would be able to ensure that the practices are being implemented effectively. We'll collect and analyze production data to understand when farmers are able to break even on these costs. And the end result will be more climate resilient farms that are doing a better job of sequestering carbon in the soil, utilizing soil as the great carbon sink that it is, and reducing overall greenhouse gas emissions. And in closing, I just wanted to say that this project is going to serve me really well. Having this behind me as I step ahead in my career, I'll be graduating from law school next year and applying for jobs. So I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have this project under my belt. And of course, thank you again to Charlene and the Community Loan Fund for being amazing hosts. And we couldn't have done it without the generous help from our sponsor, Bangor Savings Bank. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Veronica, for another great presentation and another just really interesting project and creative solution to a big challenge here. I was curious, so your framework was developed specifically for the New England region, for New Hampshire. How might it change if an organization wanted to apply this in a different region? Would there be different types of sustainability impacts if you considered extending it to other possible regions?
Yeah, that's a great question. Of course, I sort of tailored the climate smart agriculture priorities to New Hampshire. And so I think depending on what region of the country you're in, you know, whether you're on the coast or inland, there are going to be particular climate impacts or trends that a farmer would have to adapt to and look out for. And of course, even within New Hampshire, you know, there's the coast and as well as like inland and the northern part, which is more mountainous. And even within one state, there's so much variation from farm to farm. And especially because we are looking at generally small scale and highly diversified operations, it definitely is going to depend. And I would say, yeah, just part of our research was doing site visits and like a survey to local farmers so that we could get that sort of on the ground input to inform the research process.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense. Farming is complex and it's so much affected by the region, the specific location. And related to that, have you considered for all of these climate smart farming practices that you've identified, have you considered how would they be weighted the same? Would some be incentivized, or is that further incentivized, or is that kind of to be determined?
I think it's a little bit of both. So I think in the pilot, you know, we'll kind of start by looking for the low hanging fruit and like see like, you know, this farmer is interested in implementing these soil management practices and just needs the financing to kind of like get them in place. But yes, I think in terms of the priorities and sort of gleaning information from the overall sector and sort of like even the national scope, there are a lot of publications that kind of speak to agriculture nationally and what agricultural practices are the best to do, and there's a range, right? So I think the most potent greenhouse gases often come from how agricultural soil is managed. So that was my first priority. A lesser and it can include like crop production as well as livestock production, how you manage the soil. So that was the first one. And then the second was clean energy production to offset carbon dioxide emissions. And then the third is sort of like purely adaptive things that wouldn't necessarily sequester carbon or reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but would still help mitigate the stress of climate change.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Veronica, for your great presentation and sharing the work that you've done this summer.